Baseline. Today's a very special episode as it is playoff time, Nolan. It's a great time of year. I'm really fired up about it, and let's hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, the playoffs are for sure one of the best times of the year to watch, and that the players are hyped, fans are hyped, and it's just a great time, and I think we need to get into it right away.
Yeah, we really do. We really need to get into this, start breaking it down. Let's take a look at our playoff bracket here. It's going to be a really interesting bracket, some really great matchups. The big one for me is the Tampa Bay and Columbus series. I feel like the Tampa Bay and Columbus series is going to be a really big series, and I feel like Columbus could possibly win that game and win that series in 7 games.
Yeah, that will be one of the best series, if not the best series out there. But as you look at the Western Conference as well, I'd say Winnipeg against St. Louis could be a good series as well.
Yeah, that one's going to really be a dogfight, let me tell you, because Winnipeg has a lot of really, really good scorers. They currently have Patrick Laine skating on their third line, which is, just from a lineup matchup perspective, that's absolutely terrifying. And as you know, the Blues really have been carried this season by their goaltender, Jordan Binnington. He's been really hot, and I feel like he could, if anybody were to shut down the Jets, it could probably be Binnington.
Yeah, Binnington is a great player. Watching him from whenever he first played in the Boston organization, watching him develop through Providence, make his way somewhat through in the Boston, but not much, being behind main man Zane McIntyre, but then being traded, and then that's how he's now starting for the Blues, which is insane.
That's right. I mean, he really kind of came through, bust onto the scene, really saved the Blues season. He almost reminds me of how Matt Murray was in 2016, kind of really just came up. Nobody really had a lot of expectations, and he just blew everything out of the water.
Yeah, as we talk about that, but we should really focus on these playoff matchups and get right into it with the Eastern Conference.
That's right. We're going to get right into this Eastern Conference playoffs here. First round matchup, the Tampa Bay Lightning versus the Columbus Blue Jackets. I hinted at it earlier in the open, Nolan. I feel like the Blue Jackets could really surprise some people and make some noise.
Yeah, the Blue Jackets, even though they lost all the games this regular season to Tampa, they have 3 solid lines and 3 solid centers with Pierre-Luc Dubois, Matt Duchene, and Boone Jenner that are able to help them go against this Tampa team that has a strong offense as well.
That's right. And I'm really high on the Foligno, Jenner, Anderson line because they can both, all 3 of them can lay big hits and they can each score in bunches. So with that being said, we're going to look into our players to watch here. We're going to look at Tampa Bay's Anthony Cirelli. Cirelli really had a good breakthrough season this year. He had 5 shorthanded goals, scored close to 20 on the season as the Lightning's third-line center, and I feel like he's just the perfect complement to everybody else that the Lightning have in their loaded top 6 with guys like Kucherov, Point, Stamkos, all those guys. I feel like he's just really good, kind of just flies under the radar, and nobody realizes how talented he truly is.
Yeah, Cirelli is one of those young guys that fits into that lineup perfect, that if you don't have Kucherov or Stamkos going off like they did this season, you have Cirelli to back him up. But my player to watch for this series is Andre Palat, as even though he only had 8 goals, Doug, he was contributing with the assist, almost a 40-point season. Still on that first line on the left wing there with Stamkos and Johnson, and half the time they rotate Johnson and Kucherov anyways, and on that first deadly power play lineup with Hedman and Point and Stamkos and all of them, etc., whoever can fit in that lineup, they're deadly.
That's right. Even though Palat only had 8 goals, I feel like he can still really contribute. We know he really has come through for the Lightning in years prior. We remember the original Tampa triplets line of Palat, Tyler Johnson, and Kucherov right when they all first came up to the NHL, and they just really lit it up. That was a big reason why they went to the Stanley Cup Finals in 2015.
Yeah, that was a crazy year for them whenever those 3 rookies came up, and we've seen how they've developed since. But the Blue Jackets could come right back at them with these key players that we had talked about.
That's right. We're going to talk about Pierre-Luc Dubois here for the Columbus Blue Jackets. The young center came through and had 27 goals on the season, and he has a great passing ability and is very much able to get the puck to his line mates Artemi Panarin and Cam Atkinson. He's currently on their second power play unit centering that power play, and he is their first line center. And I'm really looking for big things from him if they're going to come in and slay this dragon that is the Tampa Bay Lightning, if you will, Nolan.
Yeah, watching Luc Dubois throughout Hershey and him playing for the Cleveland Monsters and winning Calder Cup down there, he got that development that he needed to fit into a John Tortorella type of coaching style, and he fits in almost perfectly. But someone else that has came into clutch key since the trade deadline was Ryan Dzingel from Ottawa, playing that second line and being on the second line power play unit. You're able to see how much of an offensive and defensive, since Ottawa, a little stat here, he was a minus 29 from Ottawa, but after being traded to Columbus, a +4. So you can see that his line, if he stayed on that second line all season with Columbus, that they really shut down any other team trying to score against them.
Yeah, I feel like that could really be a shutdown line for them, Nolan. As we know, Ryan Dzingel and Matt Duchene are old buddies from Ottawa. They came over together in 2 separate trades around the trade deadline, and they really have a lot of great chemistry together, and they've been really lighting it up since they've come to Columbus, and they're a big reason why they came in and got that 8 seed right at the end of the year.
Yeah, it was a battle with them and the Canadians, and you really didn't know who was going to get it, but Columbus pushed through to the end, and they got that seed, and now they're facing Tampa. But another key series, and probably my favorite, is the Capitals against the Hurricane series.
That's right, Nolan. We're going to take a look at that now. What are your thoughts on this series?
You know, being a Caps fan, you want them to see success, but Carolina comes in strong and kind of worries me a little, but not too much, knowing that the Caps won every game this season against Carolina, as they call themselves the bunch of jerks, so they're trying to take care of business.
I'm going to respectfully disagree with you there, Nolan. I feel like you really need to start worrying about those bunch of jerks because they're young, they're talented, they have something to prove. I feel like they could really come in here and beat the Caps and really just put the league on notice and just tell everyone that they're here and they're not going to go away.
Yeah, Carolina is just that young team that I don't think anybody expected them to do what they did come at the beginning of the season in October. But as we look at the key players, who you got, Doug?
For the Washington Capitals, I got Jacob Vrana. He had a huge breakthrough season this year. He had his first 20-goal season of his career. He's currently on their third line in their second power play unit. And I feel like Caps coach Todd Reirden really likes to put those players in a blender, kind of just shake up the lines a little bit so he can have depth scoring throughout. Very similar to the coaching style and lineup structure that Mike Sullivan deploys out in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that you need, especially in a tough division like the Metropolitan, that you always need to be able to shuffle something up and that you can't keep that same lineup. And Vrana is one of those key players that the Caps look for, and he easily could be in that top 6 next year. But my player to be able to watch on that same line with Vrana is Brett Connolly.
Okay.
And being able to see Brett Connolly, a career high of 22 goals this year, being of his age and being that third line, that's pretty impressive, saying that he's not even on the power play unit either.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, I feel like a lot of people are shocked that Brett Connolly scored 22 goals this season, but we have to keep in mind he's a first-round talent. He was drafted by the Tampa Bay Lightning, I believe, with a top 10 pick a few years back, and he's really kind of rejuvenated his career out in Washington and has become a really good role player there for the Caps.
Yeah, he's just one of those players that teams, they may need to watch him a little, but it's not that key player like the Ovechkin or Oshie or Kuznetsov that they need to keep an eye on 24/7. As we look into Carolina for your picks, on who you think.
All right, for my pick, I went with Nino Niederreiter. He was recently acquired a few months ago in a trade with the Minnesota Wild, and he's lit it up ever since he's came to Carolina. He had 30 points in his final 36 games since that trade, and It's incredible, Nolan. This isn't the first team that's given up on Niederreiter with Minnesota. I mean, the Islanders traded him for basically nothing before he made the move to the NHL. It's just incredible. He's a great player. He's on the Hurricanes' first line. He can score. He's just, it's just incredible how many people just seem to overlook this guy.
Yeah, Niederreiter is for sure one of those players that I would want on my team if I was Caps or any team, the Penguins, whoever. He's just one of those fast scoring type of guys that anybody would like. But my guy to look at is Jordan Staal from the Hurricanes, that tall center type guy that gets into the play and shows his strength that he has, as you saw in Pittsburgh whenever he played there many years ago.
That's right, Nolan. I'll be the first one to say this. Jordan Staal is probably my favorite player of all time. He's really good in the face-off circle. He's an incredible penalty killer. Can score a lot of shorthanded goals. Us fans in Pittsburgh, we used to call it the Geordie Shorty. Whenever he'd score a shorthanded goal, we always remember the shorthanded goal he scored against the Red Wings in the 2009 Stanley Cup Final, and that really kind of kicked off the party, getting ready to upset the Red Wings, beat them after losing to that heartbreaker in 2008 with Marian Hossa. So I'm with you, Nolan. Stahl's a great player, but now we're going to move into one of the biggest series in the Eastern Conference bracket, I believe, the Boston Bruins and the Toronto Maple Leafs. This is a big series in the sense that the Leafs have really constructed this great young team, but they've never been able to come through yet, as they always run into this Bruins team and they just can't beat them for whatever reason. What are your thoughts, Nolan?
Yeah, it seems like almost every year we always hear Bruins, Maple Leafs, first, second round. It's always them. We saw it last year, and it just seems like it's a yearly thing. But the Maple Leafs, I feel as though maybe the winners of this, with them building up over these past couple seasons and with the acquisition of John Tavares over the offseason. It's just something that Kyle Dubas and that Leafs team are looking for the Lord Stanley.
That's right. Kyle Dubas really came through, got some key players. Can't forget that they went out and got Jake Muzzin at the trade deadline. He's really been a great help for them. He's stepped in alongside Morgan Riley. He's been a great leader for the Leafs. But now we're going to get into our players to watch, and my player to watch for the Boston Bruins is Jake DeBrusk. He's a really great young forward, only 22 years old. He had his first 20-goal season this year. He's currently on Boston's second line, but he was able to step in earlier this year whenever David Pastrnak went down with an injury. He stepped in on that Marchand Bergeron line on that right wing, and he really lit it up. And he's been a really big key forward for them, and they're going to need him to come through with some good depth scoring if they're going to come out and beat the Maple Leafs again here, Nolan.
Yeah, DeBrusk is a key player for the Bruins, and for sure would be in my top 6 if I had to make a fantasy team with all Bruins players. And, as we look at another player from Boston is Noel Acciari, playing his first full season with the Bruins this year and being able to have that high face-off percentage. 49.63% is very high, especially for a third to fourth line center. He may not be scoring all the time, but he's able to help with the key face-offs.
That's right. I feel like face-offs are more important than people realize. We saw it with the Penguins whenever they went back-to-back and won back-to-back Stanley Cups in 2016, 2017, that both Nick Bonino and Matt Cullen had insanely high face-off percentages, but that's neither here nor there because we're going to get into our Toronto Maple Leafs players to watch. And for my pick, I went with Andreas Johnsson. Johnsson had a great season this year. He was second in rookie scoring with 43 points. He's playing on that second line there with Austin Matthews. And he's just really been a good depth piece for the Maple Leafs. So I'm going to let you get into your player to watch because I know your player to watch, Nolan, is the other player that is also playing with Austin Matthews.
Yeah, my player to watch is Kasperi Kapanen. He's one of those key players playing on the right wing of that line and then playing on the left wing of that power play, second power play unit. He has a career high in goals and assists this year and that plus 12. So that's just showing you that that line is really making sure that they're getting the offensive side down as well as the defensive side, even though they're younger.
That's right, Nolan. Kapanen's a great young player. Obviously, the Penguins ended up trading him for Phil Kessel. That's one of those players that I wish I had back, but at the same time, they don't win back-to-back Stanley Cups, let alone one Stanley Cup without Kessel. So I'm pretty content here with that. But now, since I'm talking about the Penguins, let's get into this Penguins-Islanders series, Nolan. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, this series is for sure going to be a dogfight, I think, with the Islanders under new head coach Barry Trotz this past offseason, leaving the Capitals after the Stanley Cup. Feels, though, that the Islanders may make a push at the Penguins, and this series may be tough for the Penguins to get by.
Yeah, I noticed that firsthand earlier this week. I felt like whenever we first got the playoff matchups finalized, I thought, oh, this is going to be a cakewalk. Definitely not a cakewalk. I know you and I were joking around. We said we should make our players to watch for the Islanders just be Barry Trotz because of how good of a coach he is and that system he's implemented. But my player to watch for the New York Islanders this year is going to be goaltender Robin Lehner. I feel like the only way the Islanders are going to come through and beat this Penguins team that's absolutely loaded is with very hot goaltending. Lehner's really rebounded since a rather tumultuous start to his career in Buffalo. He really kind of took some time, admitted to some issues, got some help with substance abuse, and really took care of his mental health prior to signing with the Islanders this year. And I feel like he can really come through, and it could be a really great story here in this playoffs, Nolan.
Yeah, Robin Lehner, I think just need a fresh start with a new team. Just wasn't really working out with Buffalo, I mean. Just wasn't working out there, and he needed something new. And with him and Thomas Greiss, I think they were able to come together, having goaltender coach Mitch Korn help both goalies get a lot better. As we saw, they won the award for the best goalies tandem out there.
That's right, they won the Jennings Trophy.
But my man to watch for the series is Brock Nelson. He's having a career high in points, and he's that big man on that power play standing in front of whoever the goalie is. So in this case, it's Matt Murray, being that guy that's going for the key deflections in the series.
Yeah, he's a real big guy. I feel like the Islanders really value Brock Nelson because I was looking at it earlier this week. I was looking at how they construct their lineups and their power plays. I was stunned to see that Brock Nelson is the #1 power play center for the Islanders over Matthew Barzal.
Yeah.
So that's kind of crazy to me.
Yeah, not knowing that Matthew Barzal is not on that first line, which is crazy, but knowing that they have enough people to surround themselves that Matthew Barzal can be on that second power play line to be just as dangerous.
That's right. You know, if you can have more talented players on that second power play unit, that's the better off you're going to be. But now we're going to get into our Penguins players to watch. And I decided to go with Jared McCann for the Penguins. He really came through this year since being traded alongside Nick Bjugstad to the Pittsburgh Penguins for Derek Brassard and Riley Sheahan. It was kind of a shocker trade. I feel like everybody wasn't too sold on it, but I loved it right off the bat. I knew that McCann was only 22 and was never really a part of a winning culture, being trapped in both Florida and Vancouver. He had 19 goals and 35 points in 78 games this year. He has the ability to play anywhere. He's currently on the second line with Evgeny Malkin and Patrick Hornquist. But he can, like I said, he can really play anywhere. So what are your thoughts, Nolan?
Yeah, I mean, Jared McCann is for sure out of that trade the guy that they talk about, I think, more than Nick Bjugstad almost a little. That he's got that speed, a little bit younger than Bjugstad, and just that he's able to contribute a lot more. My player to watch for the Penguins is Brian Rust, a guy that not everybody talks about, but when they do, it seems like they talk about him a lot, especially on that first line, sometimes with Crosby and Jake Gensel. He's able to contribute a lot, 4 game-winning goals and 2 shorthanded goals, so you can see that he's contributing there on the penalty kill as well.
That's right, Nolan. Brian Rust has really kind of had to take on a penalty-killing role with the Penguins because Zach Aston-Reese has been consistently injured this year, but he's really stepped his game up. He's back on that top line with Crosby and Gensel. You and I both know that that top line of Gensel, Crosby, and Rust really came through in the 2017 playoffs, especially in Game 7 in 2017 against the Caps. I know you're going to hate me for that, but that was just some insane passing they put on, and I feel like we're going to see a lot of the same here as I'm expecting the Penguins to make a really deep playoff run.
Yeah, I mean, that was for sure the dagger against the Caps, and just that the Penguins, if they go to this type of game, they could make that push, but if they don't, they could have a tough run against these Islanders.
Yeah, that's right. And now on that note, we're going to get into the western side of the bracket with the Calgary-Colorado matchup.
Yeah, this matchup is one that you thought at the beginning of the season, if they would have said who was playing at the beginning, that Colorado probably would have had this. But Calgary changed some things up, and I think they may roll in this series in 4.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Nolan. I feel like this is the only series that I believe could be a clean sweep because the Avalanche are really a one-line team, and you never succeed in the playoffs as a one-line team. We saw it a lot in the early 2000s with the Anaheim Ducks, how they had the one line of Paul Kariya, Steve Ruchin, and Teemu Selanne. They'd always go deep in the playoffs, and then they'd end up getting swept. I'm expecting the same thing to happen here because there's literally no secondary scoring for the Avalanche. So we're going to get into our players to watch here now for this Calgary-Colorado series. And for the Flames, I went with Matthew Tkachuk, and I believe you also did as well.
Yeah, I believe for both of these picks, we both went with the same players, but Matthew Tkachuk, career high in points. He's a natural left winger, and that's where he's playing. But if he gets called into that face-off zone, he's still 46.15%. So they can rely on Tkachuk to win the face-off if they need him to.
That's right. He's really, and I've been saying this for a couple of days now. If you look up playoff hockey player in the dictionary, I believe a picture of Matthew Tkachuk will appear because he really just gets in people's faces. You know, he can fight. He's a pest. But let's not forget the fact that he had 77 points in 80 games this year. So he kind of reminds you of Brad Marchand in a way that he can still be a pain to the other team, but he can still play that skill game.
Yeah, Tkachuk is just one of those little gritty players that likes to get in everybody's heads. And that's what helps for sure if they want a power play, being able to get in the other team's heads, making them draw penalties, and that's key. But as we look at Colorado, I think we both picked the same player as Nathan MacKinnon.
Yes, we both did pick Nathan MacKinnon. I believe that the only prayer in the world the Colorado Avalanche have of winning this series is if Nathan MacKinnon goes out and has the series of his life. He had 41 goals and 99 points in 82 games this year, and he's really been the driving force of the Avalanche. I mean, we saw it last year. He single-handedly willed them into the playoffs. And I feel like if they do want to make a run, he's going to have to will them through the playoffs this time around.
Yeah, I would totally have to agree with you there, and that's about it for Nathan MacKinnon. He has to carry this team, so.
Yeah, I feel like the Avalanche are kind of a boring team. They're just one line, and that's it. So on that note, we're going to get into the Predators and Stars series. And I feel like this one's going to be a rather interesting matchup because the Stars have really figured themselves out. We know that the Stars ownership went out and called out both Tyler Seguin and Jamie Benn. That was a rather boneheaded decision, in my opinion. But we all know that since they made the playoffs, the ownership is going to believe that that was the reason they made the playoffs, Nolan.
Yeah, I mean, this series is one, if not one of the best series out there with the Predators Stars, just that key rivalry that's been brewing over years. But as we look into the key players, the Predators, you know, they're not a team to mess with.
No, they are not a team to mess with. And for my player to watch, I went with Victor Arvidsson. Victor Arvidsson was hurt for a portion of this season, and believe it or not, it took him only 50 games this season to score 30 goals. He scored his 30th goal in his 50th game, and he finished with 34 goals in 58 games. He's on that first line with Forsberg and Johansson, and he's one of their driving forces on their top power play unit. And he's an undersized player, but he really kind of flies under the radar. So I feel like he could have an unreal playoff if Nashville were to go on a run. What do you think, Nolan?
Yeah, Victor Arvidsson's just one of those players that, you know, undrafted player for the Predators that they signed from free agency. He's just kind of quick little player that can get around the ice, almost like a Philip Forsberg that the Caps used to have before trading him. He's just one of those players that you always need to watch out for him, and that injury kind of set him down, but I feel like he would have had a lot more points, and they probably would have had a higher seed if he would have been there all year.
I agree with you. I feel like if he were healthy for the entire season, I think we might be talking about Victor Arvidsson being a 50-goal scorer with how his scoring abilities evolved over the past few years. I feel like this year would have been a year that he would have hit pay dirt and really came through, but the injury bug came and bit him. So let's get into your player to watch, Nolan.
Yeah, and probably one of my favorite players from Nashville is PK Subban. He's just one of those type of defenders that you love to see, and he's a fan favorite. He's on that second D pairing, and this may be this is his lowest season for points scored with only 31 points, but in the playoffs he's stepped it up over the years, gaining more and more points over the playoffs, and we saw it whenever they played the Penguins in the finals that one year that they really needed to count on him, and with him being on that power play first unit, he needs to step it up if he wants to help this Nashville team make a run.
Yeah, I feel like he's really going to step it up this year. I feel like he's going to come through and have a big playoff. I mean, we're all saying that 31 points is a down year for PK Subban, which is kind of crazy because if it were any other defenseman scoring 31 points, you and I would be like, oh my goodness, that's absolutely amazing. But in that sense, I feel like he just needs to come through and kind of prove everybody wrong, prove that he's still a very good player and can produce. So we're going to get into the Dallas Stars portion of our players to watch. And for my player to watch, I went with the young rookie Miro Heiskanen. Miro Heiskanen is a 19-year-old defenseman who is just in his first season in the NHL with the Dallas Stars, and he had 12 goals and 21 assists as a rookie from the blue line. He's on the second pairing with Roman Polak, and he is currently quarterbacking that second power play unit for Dallas.
Yeah, Miro Heiskanen, just one of those players that he's out there and that you should be able to fear. We saw it in that opening game whenever he had that first shift that you just saw him take it right up the ice, and I think they scored a goal that first shift for the Stars whenever he came in, and you just saw the impact right away. And with him being on that second unit, I feel as though next year he'll be on that first unit, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I feel like he could be on that top pairing. It all depends on how they want to construct it. But let's get into your player to watch, Nolan.
Yeah, my player to watch is Rob Hintz. And Rob Hintz is that second line center and that second line power play. And Rob is one of those younger players for Dallas, but he's able to contribute. Only in his first season, 22 points. So, a little bit lower than probably what he would have liked. But being one of those younger players coming into an organization that, used to be with the Texas Stars, so trying to develop his game, I think he may be one of those key players that may step it up throughout the playoffs here.
That's right. Hintz really is one of those young players the Stars are going to have to rely on alongside guys like Heiskanen, Jason Dickinson. I know Jason Dickinson's currently playing on the top line with Seguin right now, so they're going to need all these young players to come through if they're going to make a playoff run.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, Jason Dickinson, we'll have to see if he can contribute as he's on that top line, or if they'll need to switch it up, and maybe Hintz will get that promotion up to that first line, maybe having to play that right wing a little.
Yeah, that is certainly a great possibility because Jason Dickinson's also a natural center by trade. But on that note, let's get into the Sharks and the Golden Knights series. What are you thinking, Nolan?
This is quite a series, and you would think the Knights would probably take this after watching them last year sweep series after series. You would just think, they're going to bring it again, but a little bit lower this year. But the Sharks just have that powerful team with acquisition of Gustav Nyquist at the trade deadline from the Detroit Red Wings. It's just the Sharks may take this series and knock out those rowdy Vegas fans.
They honestly could, Nolan, and I agree with you. I mean, I said earlier that I don't really trust Marc-Andre Fleury this year, but I feel like if the Sharks were to beat the Golden Knights, one of those big players they're going to have to come through is young Timo Meier. Timo Meier took a huge step forward this season, having his first career 30-goal season, and he's a really big part of their first line. He's that first line left winger. He's on the second power play unit. He's a really good goal scorer, and I feel like he's going to have to come through and be consistent if they want to do this and knock off the Vegas Golden Knights.
Yeah, Timo Myers, as you said, one of those young guys that almost needs to contribute, if not nightly, every other type of game. But my player that almost needs to do the same is Kevin LeBlanc. You know, a season high with 56 points, playing on that third line, right wing with the big man, Joe Thornton. You can't forget about him. And he plays on that power play unit, but he's almost back there as one of the quarterbacks because he's back there playing that left D position. So he's kind of controlling it as, you know, he has 4 game-winning goals and 2 overtime goals. So you can see that if they need him to step up, he can.
That's right, Nolan. I love that pick. I'm a big Kevin LeBlanc guy. I almost picked him over Timo Meier to be my player to watch, but you're right. If he's on that power play unit running the point, possibly QB in it, you know, they need him to come through. They need him to have that big powering shot from that circle and just be able to score.
Yeah, I mean, he almost needs that Alex Ovechkin shot, which I don't know if many players will ever have the exact Alex Ovechkin shot, but something like that needs to happen. But as we look at the Knights, who do you got there, Doug?
I got Mark Stone. That big trade acquisition at the deadline, last second, it was a buzzer beater. The Vegas Golden Knights acquired Mark Stone from the Ottawa Senators and immediately signed him to a contract extension. And he really has come through for them. He had a career-high 33 goals this season. He's playing on a line with Max Pacioretty and Paul Stastny. And right after that trade, that was one of the best lines in the entire league up until the point that Max Pacioretty got injured. So I feel like with those 3 reunited, they're going to really come through, and it's going to be a big playoff there for Mark Stone.
Yeah, Mark Stone was, you didn't know if he was going to be traded or not, and it was just that last 5 minutes was key for this trade, and Vegas almost won this trade, and I think Mark Stone needs to step up. But another guy that, you know, we haven't heard about much this year, we heard about him a lot during the playoff run last year, was Alex Tuch.
Okay, I like that.
You know, with Alex Tuch playing that third line right wing, it's kind of, you know, not where you expect him to be, but being able to play that second line power play unit. Last year, he had 10 points in 20 games, and he has that 6 game-winning goals. So they really rely on him when they need. And he's just kind of that gritty playoff player. You know, the Caps, last time you really heard about Alex Tuch was Braden Holtby saving him on the goal line of that series to almost put the dagger in.
That's right, Nolan. That save on Tuch by Holtby was absolutely ridiculous, but I feel like Tuch on that third line is a really smart move. You need to have players that can score on your third line. You need to spread out the offense, and I feel like that's going to be something that's going to have to happen here going forward. But now with the Western Conference, we're going to close this little players to watch bit out with the Winnipeg Jets and the St. Louis Blues series. What are you thinking, Nolan?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those series that is, I feel as though, going to be gritty as well, and that it's not going to be pretty by the end, and that there's maybe a couple players that may get banged up from this series just with the Jets with their size, thinking, you know, that they got this. But the Blues, you can't miss the Blues, especially with Jordan Binnington, and that he's carrying that team that they want to make a run with him.
Yeah, they certainly do. They finally have it figured out. They finally have a consistent goaltender to go with all the great players they have. But now we're going to get into our players to watch for the Winnipeg Jets. I decided to go with Kyle Connor. He's currently on their top line with Mark Scheifele, and he had 34 goals this season. And he really flies under the radar because whenever you think of the Jets, you think of Scheifele, Wheeler, Dustin Byfuglien, Laine. He's not even one of the key important guys, but since he's able to fly under the radar like that, he's able to score a lot of goals. He almost reminds me of Phil Kessel in the sense that he just kind of avoids the limelight and just goes about his business.
Yeah, Kyle Connor, they're in his mid-20s. He's just one of those key players that the Jets rely on. Kind of smaller forward, but he's always a guy that I like to have in my fantasy team just because he's always producing. You just don't think about it all the time. But as we look at my player, I have Andrew Kopp. You know, even though he's that third line left winger, I feel as though he can be one of those guys that the Jets can shuffle in and out depending on who's producing and who's not. And even though he's at left wing, he can play that center. And being able to win 55.31% of the faceoffs, that's critical during key times if they need to switch up lines, being able to go to Cop like that.
Yeah, that's crazy that they have him playing left wing with such a high face-off percentage like that. You know, he's a really good player, really good bottom six piece, can kill penalties, can block shots. Almost reminds you of Brian Rust in the sense that they just throw him around everywhere through the lineup and he just continues to play and produce. And now we're going to get into our St. Louis Blues players to watch. I feel like this one was pretty obvious. I went with Jordan Binnington because Binnington's been hot. He single-handedly got the Blues into the playoffs. He has a 24-5-1 record with a 189 goals against average. And if the Blues are going to go through the playoffs here like I think they're going to, they're going to need Binnington to stay hot and just continue to improve each day and just really keep making the big saves, maybe get some key shutouts and just shut other teams down, man.
Yeah, Binnington's that guy that needs to stay hot, and if they make a run, I feel as though that his potential for that Calder Trophy is for sure going to go up no matter what, no matter how far they go. But my guy to look at, and I know you joke around a little bit with this, is Robert Thomas. You know, only having 3 power play goals and being on that third line right wing with Patrick Maroon and Tyler Bozak, it's kind of that gritty third line that teams don't want to go against. And last year, Robert Thomas was that OHL playoff MVP for the London Knights whenever they won the OHL Memorial Cup.
That's right. Rob Thomas is a great player. Also, there's another guy, Rob Thomas. He's a great singer. But I feel like the hockey Rob Thomas and that third line of the St. Louis Blues is really going to make the Winnipeg Jets feel a little bit unwell. Don't you say, Nolan?
Yeah, I mean, that entire Blues team, even if it's Thomas or anybody, Tarasenko, Parayko, any of those type of guys, you know, this Blues team is not to be mistaken at all, and that they could make a run.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think they're going to make a run. We're going to get into our Stanley Cup picks, and speaking of the St. Louis Blues, I actually have the St. Louis Blues in the Stanley Cup losing to the Pittsburgh Penguins because I feel like the Penguins are really going to go on a run. Matt Murray's going to go off. He's going to get hot, and everything's going to just work out, fall into place, and Lord Stanley's going to come back to Pittsburgh where it rightfully belongs.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to maybe agree with you here. Sure, I don't want to say that the Penguins are going to win again, but, you know, they can make that run. They just need key guys to step up. And same thing with the Blues. They need Binnington to stay hot, guys like Robert Thomas and even Patrick Maroon or Tyler Bozak. Those type of guys that used to be key players for other organizations need to step it up if they want a chance. But as we look at my prediction, I have the San Jose Sharks against the Tampa Bay Lightning. And that's a series that you may not want to mess with either.
No, I feel like that would be one heck of a series there, Nolan. 2 really loaded teams, two good young goalies just going head-to-head as well. I feel like that would be a really, really good series and would be really, really good for the league. You know, you'll have Kucherov and guys like Kucherov and Timo Meier going at it, key goal scorers. You know, you'll have depth guys like Kevin LeBlanc and JT Miller. I just feel like it would be a very good matchup and would be really kind of even set, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, I would have to agree with you there that both of these teams have key players with Brett Burns and Hedman for Tampa. It's just kind of even, and I feel as though the fans would really get into it with, you know, you have the Shark Tank out west with San Jose, and then you have Tampa, and just the atmosphere that they have there with the whole lightning bolt and everything going on. That would be one heck of a series.
Yeah, it is 2 fantastic fan bases indeed. I know that firsthand. I saw it firsthand. I was at Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Finals in 2016, and I honestly believe there were more Sharks fans there than Penguin fans. They traveled really well. A lot of people were there. A lot of people were really excited. It was really fun to see. So on that note, this is the end of our show here. I feel like we went through all of our playoff predictions, got everything, you know, underway and out of the way so our viewers know what's going on and they're informed. I feel like this was a great show, Nolan. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it was a great show overall. You know, glad that we could do it once again before the end of the year comes by, and I think we're going to have some exciting playoff hockey come until that end of the Stanley Cup sometime in the beginning of June, hopefully.
That's right. I feel like we're going to have a lot of great playoff hockey going for us here until June. I feel like the Penguins are going to play well into June. People are going to think I'm crazy for that, but I'm going with it. But this has been Forechecking with Doug and Nolan, playoff edition. Thank you, everyone, and we will see you in the fall, probably around October, whenever it's time to get back into hockey. So have a great day, and thanks for watching.